"Ye are okay so," she said and left the room, with the guard. My mother had been outside talking to the guard for some time, hours, and no sign of our father. Later on in the day, my mother and the guard came into the house and asked Declan to get myself and Dean, as they wanted to talk to us. Declan found us in the hallway and said, "Ye have to go to the sitting room. Ye are wanted." So we went to the sitting room, where my mother and the guard stood earlier, and asked us to sit down, so myself and Dean sat on the floor. Our mother said, "What we were talking about earlier, moving away, we just want to make sure ye are all right with moving." Dean: "Are you okay with it?" And he nodded his head. Then she said, "Maurice, are you okay about moving?" And I nodded my head like Dean. She said, "That's good, boys," and seemed relieved that myself and Dean were fine with it. She just wanted to make sure, as myself and Dean were very young and thought we needed to be told again, and that we might not have fully understood what was going on. She and the guard left. My mother looked happy. I felt even better again, thinking this is really happening. I felt that the guard fixed everything, and from now on everything was going to be okay. That day I played with Dean, feeling free to play, and if our father comes in he won't be able to do anything to us now that the guard knew what he was doing to us and probably told him not to beat us anymore. The following day, or days, our mother called us all to the sitting room. She wanted to talk to us. She had something to say to us. We all came to the sitting room. Our mother had been standing in the same place where she and the guard had told us about the move to Cork. We sat down on the floor. I didn't know what it was going to be about. She said, "We are not moving to Cork. We are going to stay here." She didn't seem herself. I didn't know what to feel. I was disappointed, thinking, why aren't we going? I thought, I'm stuck here. I said to myself, I'm just going to have to put up with the beatings, but maybe it might be okay now, that the guard might have frightened him into leaving us alone. I felt a bit nervous as I didn't really know what way things were going to be, thinking, is he going to continue to beat me, or is he going to leave me alone now? My mother left the room looking disappointed. She probably felt like she let us down, as our mother would do anything for us, but she had been manipulated by our father to pull the plug on moving to Cork and had been threatened in numerous ways if she didn't. I couldn't tell what way my brothers took it. They said nothing. They were always quiet. Anyway, our father had put so much fear into them. I'm sure they were probably very disappointed, as they really feared our father. For us, it was back to kneeling on the hard floor every evening saying prayers and living in fear of our father. In the evenings and the weekends, when my brothers were off from school, our father had started to let us go outside, which was a relief for us even though we were conditioned to being in the house all the time. It was great to be finally let outside and not under the watchful eye of our father. Chapter 4: Devil in the House. 24. One day he had said to my brothers, "I'm going down the fields. Ye are to come as well." My mother was in the kitchen making dinner. My brothers started to follow him, and I went to follow my brothers thinking that I was to go as well, when he turned and said to me, "Where the fuck do you think you are going? Stay there, you little fucker," getting into a bit of a rage and spit coming from his lips. He turned around and walking out the door he said to my mother still with anger in his voice, "Keep that cunt here," and went out the door with my brothers, following him. I didn't really feel left out because I knew I was safe while he was gone, and I was left with my mother who was very nice to me. I was a bit bored while they were gone. There was nobody to play with or talk to, but I knew I was safe where I was with my mother, which made me happy. My mother talked to me whenever she could, always asking was I okay, but she was busy making dinner, so she couldn't be with me all the time. I ran around the house by myself, and my mother checking on me whenever she could. Sometime later my father and my brothers had come back. My brothers didn't come in, they were taking advantage of being allowed outside. I was in the sitting room, when my father walked past my mother in the kitchen and came into me in a rage with his fists clenched, shouting at me, "You little fucker. You little cunt. I had a right to fucking kill you, you cunt." I stood there looking at him, as he was getting more and more angry. I remember saying to myself, "He really hates me, and I hate him." I could sense that he didn't like that my mother treated me so well, or something like that. I stood there and didn't move, just looking at him in a rage, shouting all sorts. He made a couple lunges forwards as to go for me, but I didn't move. He eventually turned around and walked towards the kitchen, still cursing and calling me a cunt. This continued. He would bring my brothers places and leave me behind, and on return he would shout abuse at me and call me names in front of my brothers, trying to get them to laugh at me. They never did, but my father would try and make a fool out of me any chance he would get. Chapter 4: Devil in the House. go into the church and discuss this with our parents. My father had been quiet and said nothing, and I had thought, he's only being nice in front of our cousin, and had not told us that we had to come into the church. "Sir, you can come in after a while if you want," said my mother when Philip burst out laughing, knowing that they were not going to go into the church at any stage, and knowing our mother would only want for us what we wanted. My mother said, "Sir, go on all of ye, and I'll mind Maurice because ye might lose him." I didn't want to go into the church either, but I knew my mother was bringing me for my own good, as the place was so big with so many people it would be very easy for me to get lost if my brothers didn't mind me properly. So my brothers and cousin hit off with delight on their faces, and I went into the church with my mother and father. The priest started Mass, and I became very bored quickly, thinking I'd rather be with my brothers outside. After some time I really needed to go to the toilet, and had told my mother that I needed to go, and she said to my father that she was going to bring me out to the toilet, when he said, "Sure, can't he hold it until Mass is over?" with my mother turning to me asking, "How bad do you have to go?" and I told her I needed to go right away. "He has to go right away," she said to my father. "Can't he go by himself?" he said. "He will have you gone for ages, and you will miss what the priest is saying," and he had got somewhat angry saying this to my mother. My mother then told me to go right outside the door and not go any further and come right back. I could see that my mother was really worried about me getting lost, and repeated a few times what I was to do. "Just go out the back and no further, and come straight back," and I jumped from her lap and went to the outside of the seat, where I looked at how far down we were sitting from the door to work out how to get back and not get lost, and then went to the back door. At the back door there was a lot of glass, and I could see right into the church, but I didn't want to go to the toilet at the back doors of the church, as there was so many people that could see me. I really needed to go, and I knew I needed to find a place right away, but I was really worried about going to the right or left of where I was, as there were many sections that looked the same, and I could not identify anything different from the one where my mother was to any of the other. I seen a wall to the left, and I started to walk backwards and not let my eyes away from where I had to enter to get back to my mother. I went to the toilet quickly, and on my way back I had lost track of the part of the church that I needed to enter, and I panicked, taking a rough guess of where to enter, and headed in, walking down past the rows of seats, hoping I would see where my mother had been sitting. Chapter 4: Devil in the House. 26. To my delight I spotted her, and the panic was over. The priest continued with Mass, and again later through the Mass I felt I needed to go again, and I had told my mother once again, where she said, "Just do the same as last time and come back. Can you come with me?" I said to her, telling her I nearly got lost the last time, where again she had said to my father that she was going with me, telling him that I said I nearly got lost the last time, where my father got angry and leant over to me, telling me, "Go out to the end of the seat and piss against the wall if you don't want to get lost," with the anger turning to a big grin as he told me. "Stop," my mother said to him, where he got angry, which was somewhat controlled only with the amount of people sitting beside us, and quietly but aggressively said to my mother, "Well, if he doesn't, he'll probably go outside and get lost," and with this he had manipulated my mother into letting him get his way, and again with a big grin on his face, he told me to go out to the wall and piss up against it. I started to think, is it all right to go to the toilet in the church in front of these people? Because my father said so, or is he making a fool of me, trying to embarrass me? As I thought, there was something suspicious about that grin on his face as I turned and went past the people to the end of the seat, looking around thinking, this is not right. I can't go to the toilet against the wall in the church. I looked in past the people and seen that my mother and father had been looking straight ahead to the altar, and thought maybe my father is not making a fool of me. He was looking the other way without the grin on his face. I turned to the wall and opened the zip on my pants. I felt really embarrassed and did not want to go through with it, but I did not want to go outside again, thinking I will definitely get lost this time if I do. There had been air holes in the wall, and I decided I would go to the toilet in one of them, and I tried to reach by going on my tiptoes. I knew I needed to start to go as it was difficult to stay on my tiptoes, and I started to go as I thought of all of the people looking at me, still wondering was this right or wrong. As I came back down off my toes, not able to keep myself up with me going onto the wall, as I turned to see was this okay, and seen my father grinning from ear to ear, and quickly realized that my father had tricked me, and I did not go back on my tiptoes. I just finished by peeing up against the wall, asking myself, what must all the people in the church be thinking, as I pulled up the zip on my pants, watching the wee flow down the church. My father had got a big thrill from what he had done, and just as we all packed into the car to head for home, my father turned and gave money to our cousin and said to him to go into the shop and get yourself some sweets, and when you come back out, don't share the sweets with them cunts. My father had made a fool of me in the church during the day, and at the end of the day he had made a fool of us all in front of our cousin. Chapter 5. Some Kind of Life. 27. Chapter 5. Some Kind of Life. We are going to die tonight. Age: 5 to 6 years old. Corruption and bad grooming, beginnings of learned behavior, daily routine of rat poisoning, threats of killing the family, continued nightly physical abuse and torture, drownings in a barrel. On the weekends, my parents would go to the local pubs, and Granny and Granddad would come and babysit myself and my brothers, and when my grandparents could not come to our home to babysit us, my parents would bring us with them to the pub. I enjoyed going to the pub as it was away from the abuse of my father. There was a room with a pool table and video games, and myself and my brothers spent a lot of time in that room. I watched my older brothers playing pool and playing video games. My oldest brother would lift me up so I could see the screen while people played the games. Our parents started to bring us to the pubs more and more, as it was very hard for my grandparents to come and mind us. They lived miles away. When we would get to the pub, my father would get a large bottle of 7-Up for myself and my brothers. He would always be nice to us when other people would be looking. We spent most of our time in the pool room, and sometimes I would go to the lounge to be with my mother. I would ask my mother for some of her drink, and she would say, "I can't give it to you. It's alcohol. It will make you sick." I would keep asking her, and eventually she would give in. My mother never wanted to say no to me. She was really kind-hearted. She would say, "Only a small sip now, Maurice." I would take the sip, and then she would take it from me and say nicely, "That's all I can give you. If you drink any more, it will make you sick." When my uncle and aunts would come to the pubs with us, I would spend more time with them in the lounge as I really liked my uncles and aunts. I had been with them in the lounge one night when I asked my father could I take a drink of his Guinness. I thought he would get mad and say no, as he was so strict with me and my brothers. To my surprise he said happily, "Go on." Sure. I picked up his half-finished pint of his Guinness and started to slowly drink from it. That pleasured look came on my father's face. Chapter 5, Some Kind of Life. 28. I thought, why is he so nice to me letting me drink his pint? I thought he was putting on a show in front of everybody, pretending to like me, but with that pleasured look on his face, something felt not right, as my father was smiling. I kept supping from the pint, then he started to laugh and made no attempt to stop me, when my mother stepped in and said, "That's enough, Maurice," and took my father's drink and left it down. Nobody was saying anything as my father continued to laugh with that pleasured look on his face. What I found out later in life, he had been letting me drink his alcohol in the hope I would get sick, and that is what he wanted to see. He got great pleasure in seeing me suffer. This would continue on pub nights. He would let me drink the alcohol and sit there laughing with a pleasured look on his face. In the pool room there was lots of boys the same age as myself, and we started to get to know each other as we had been going into the town almost every weekend. One of the boys had dared me to hit one of the other boys, and without hesitation I went over to this boy and punched him in the stomach. The boy didn't hit me back. He was shocked at what I did to him for no reason. I felt really bad after doing it. That boy became one of my closest friends to date, and what I found out later in life, I had done to that boy what my father was doing to me at home, punching me in the stomach repeatedly night after night after night. My parents started to visit friends and relations a lot and brought myself and Dean with them and left the rest of my brothers at home, who at this stage were old enough to mind themselves at home, but weren't capable of looking after myself and Dean, who was now 6.5 and I had got into my 5th year. I enjoyed going visiting with my parents. Everyone we visited were very nice and were good to myself and Dean. My father wouldn't make any effort to talk or come near myself and Dean while visiting, but he would hide his anger and hatred for us, pretending to be a good father. We had been going to our uncle's a lot, to my mother's brother who lived in the house where my mother was raised by my grandparents. We went there more than anywhere else as it was my mother's home place and my grandparents lived there with my uncle and his wife and 3 children. Every time we visited my uncle he would bring myself and my brothers for a spin in his car. We had come there one day and my uncle's wife said to us, Our uncle bought a new car and when he gets back from town he will bring me for a spin in it." I got really excited and so did everybody else, and we couldn't wait until Matty got back to see his new car. We were all looking out the window into the long driveway, waiting for Uncle to come back. He finally came down the road and turned in the driveway. I seen a lovely blue-colored car coming down the driveway. We all ran through the house and out the back to see the new car. Uncle pulled up, got out, and said, "Do you like my new car?" We all said yeah, and asked him was he going to bring us for a spin. He said, "Of course I am. Everybody get in," he said. Chapter 5, Some Kind of Life. 29. We all piled in. I was sitting on my brother's knees looking out between the front seats. I was really excited as my uncle slowly drove off. He would speed up and then slow down and then speed up again and slow down. He knew this excited us. When he would slow down we would say, "Do it again, Maddie. Do it again," and he always would. It was a very happy time for myself and my brothers, and on many occasions while being in the car with my brothers and my uncle, I said to myself, why can't our father be like our uncle? Everybody was relaxed in the company of my uncle. It was a big change from being in the company of our father, as I never seen my brothers as happy while they were away from him. Uncle and his wife had invited my parents to their house one night for a few drinks, and brought myself and Dean with them. Declan, Colin and Philip stayed at home. Myself and Dean went into Granny and Granddad's room, where they lay down reading the papers, talking to them. Then we would go into the middle room where our mother slept when she was young. Our mother would always show us the room where she slept growing up. Myself and Dean liked to go into this room as it was where our mother slept when she was our age. We went into this room and in to talk to Granny and Granddad all night, going from one room to the other. Later in the night, myself and Dean had gone downstairs and into the room opposite to where our parents were talking to our uncle and his wife and my other uncle who lived next door. As we played in the room, I heard loud talking that was getting louder and louder, when my mother had come into us and said to us, "Cloonan lads, we are going home," and hurried us out the door and into the car. I knew something was wrong as we sat in the car. Our mother ran back inside. After a few seconds, I heard shouting coming from the house, and then my mother came out pulling my father to the car. They both got in and my father started the car and drove out the driveway. I didn't really know why my mother rushed us out the door and made our father drive off. As we drove down the road, there was silence between my mother and father. After a few minutes driving down the road, my mother said to my father, "What were you at arguing about politics? They could have killed you," referring to my two uncles, when he jammed on the brakes while also pulling the handbrake. The car was coming to a near standstill when my mother opened the door and went to jump out as the car was just slightly moving, coming to a stop. Dean started roaring, crying. My father made a move as to attack my mother, but as she was half out of the car door and the car had come to a complete stop, he sat back in his seat. When my mother seen this, she got back in. Then my father continued to drive home. Dean was in an awful state, still bawling, crying. I remember feeling sad for my mother and more sad for Dean as we drove down the road. I remember saying to myself, "I'm going to kill him when I get older. I'm going to kill him." I felt a lot of anger, and that's the moment I really started to hate my father. From then on, my father had stopped my mother from going to visit her brothers. In the mornings, my father started to make the porridge for myself and my brothers. It was unusual, as my mother had always made it for us while my father would get the cows ready. Chapter 5: Some Kind of Life. 30. For milking. Now my mother had to get the cows prepared for milking, and my father looked after us with the breakfast. We sat on the couch in the mornings, and our father would call us one by one into the kitchen for our bowl of porridge. We never had anything else but a bowl of porridge in the morning. He called my brothers and they went into the kitchen. got their porridge and came back in with it and started to eat it at the table when my father called me to the kitchen for my bowl of porridge. I went into the kitchen where my father had been stirring my bowl with a spoon. "It's nearly ready now," he said. He was being very nice. It was very unusual. It wasn't often he would be nice. Mostly he would only be nice towards me when friends and relations were around. I thought he is only being nice to me because he is feeding me. He never deprived us of food. As I waited for my father to stir my porridge, I seen the package of porridge and beside it a spoon and the bag of rat poison. We had seen the bag of poison a lot around the place as we were plagued with rats. We would see our father often setting it out to kill the mice. He would set the poison and then leave the bag of poison in the shed after. It wasn't unusual to see the bag of poison from time to time, but my father would always leave it back in the shed when he was finished setting it out for the mice to eat it. It felt very strange seeing the bag of poison right beside the porridge bag, but when my father stopped stirring, I took the bowl and joined my brothers at the table. Shortly my father came in and sat at the top of the table. He folded his arms, leant on the table and started looking straight at me. I looked at my food and started to eat. I could see out of the corner of my eye that my father was still staring at me. He wasn't saying a word, which was unusual. Usually when we would be eating our food he would be shouting, "You should only get bread and water, you cunts," repeatedly. It felt uncomfortable as I knew he was staring at me. I looked up at him and I seen that he had that pleasured look on his face and he was smiling. He was staring straight at me. He didn't take his eyes off me. He was grinning like crazy. I thought, is he smiling at me because he is going to beat me, or is he smiling now because he decided to like me? I was very confused to why he was grinning and smiling. Again thinking maybe he is smiling about the beating he is going to give me later, or is things all right between us now? Does he like me? Is this why he is smiling? I continued to eat my porridge, every now and again looking up at my father. I felt there is something going on. Why is he still staring at me and not looking at any of my brothers? It felt very awkward. Later on that day I felt unwell, and the following day or days I started to get bad nosebleeds throughout the day. The bleeds were bad, and my father would say, "Put your head up and hold it there until the blood stops." I worried a lot when it would happen. There was lots of blood and it took ages for it to stop. Chapter 5, Some Kind of Life. 31. The bleeds started to happen very frequently, and my mother got worried and said to my father, "We will have to bring Maurice to the doctor," and he replied, "It's only nosebleeds he's getting. Dr. my arse, sure there's nothing he could do for nosebleeds anyway. Put his head back when it happens and he will be all right." So my mother didn't bring me as she was afraid to go against my father's advice. The coming days, weeks and months, I was feeling very unwell, and the nosebleeds were happening frequently, and my father refused to bring me to the doctor, manipulating my mother into not bringing me to the doctor any time she said that I needed to see a doctor for the bleeds. Then Dean started to get the bleeds. I felt bad for him as now he was getting bleeds like I was. This continued for some time, months, maybe even years, and our father never wanted to bring myself and Dean to the doctor, every time manipulating my mother, saying they will be all right, sure they are only nosebleeds. In 2013, when for the first time since the abuse, myself and my brother Colin started to talk about our obscure and twisted childhood. I had kept it locked away from everyone for 36 years before myself and Colin spoke. One of the first things he had said to me about it was, regarding my father, he said, "Do you want to know what he was putting in your porridge when you were very young?" Instantly I knew. I thought of my father staring across the table at me with that pleasured look that made me feel somewhat aware that something was wrong, and I thought of the bag of rat poison that I seen in the kitchen on the counter beside my father when he was stirring my porridge. I knew, but I said, "What?" And Colin replied with a very serious look on his face, "He was putting rat poison in your porridge. I seen him putting it in your porridge and he was staring right at you while you were eating the porridge." The sick bastard. I knew by his tone that it was sincere, and when he said that, my father was staring right over the table at me, I knew that he had seen exactly what I remembered at the table. I said to Colin, "I remember he was staring right at me and didn't move his eyes away from me." And again in very serious tone Colin replied, "Yeah, and he was waiting for you to drop dead at the table." The sick bastard. I said, "Wasn't he sitting at the top of the table, staring at me?" Colin replied, "Yeah, he had his arms folded leaning on the table." I said, "That's exactly what I remember." Colin replied, "Yeah, staring into your eyes waiting for you to get fucked up." And said, "I didn't eat my porridge, I was too afraid, but the old lad didn't care as long as you were eating yours, and you loved your porridge." I said, "I remember it well. There is a lot of it I can't rightly remember, but I can remember very clearly him staring across the table at me, and I remember seeing the bag of poison in the kitchen when he used to call me out for the porridge. I'm not surprised, I know better than anyone how sick that man is." I said. It wasn't in any way a shock to hear this, as I knew how twisted my father was, and said to Colin, "That would be him all right, sure he is capable of anything." Chapter 5, Some Kind of Life. 32. And Colin replied, "He's the sickest bastard on the planet, that's what he done to you." It was like talking about the weather to me, as I knew what my father was capable of and the sick, twisted things he done to me. "Yeah, he is a serious sick bastard all right," I said. When Colin replied, "When I seen him poisoning you, that's when I knew how sick he really was. I was older than you and I could see what he was doing. I was afraid to eat the porridge. I thought you were going to die, the sick bastard." I said, "Yeah, he's sick. He done things to me in the room that I couldn't really tell anyone, they would hardly believe it." Colin looked at me and said, "I don't ever want to know what he did to you in the room because of what it would do to my head," referring to what it would do to his mind. I had fully believed in everything Colin was telling me, especially when he could describe exactly the way I remember my father acting at the table, but I was confused as to why I didn't die from the poison, and had said to Colin, "How did I not die from the poison?" He said, "It was the first thing I researched when I started medical school, and the nosebleeds are consistent with rat poisoning, and you were getting nosebleeds all the time." Thinking I wouldn't remember, I said, Yeah, the nosebleeds were happening all the time. And that's what rat poison does to humans, he said. I thought rat poison would kill you straight away. I asked him, when he said, it depends on how much of it you consume. He wasn't giving you enough to kill ya. He probably thought he was giving you enough. I seen him crushing it with a spoon in the kitchen. I can somehow remember seeing the spoon beside the bag of poison. I said. Isn't he some man? I joked, where again Colin referred to him being the sickest bastard in the world. As I had known for more than 30 years how sick my father was, I just started talking about something else and didn't think about the conversation. Myself and Colin had for the rest of the day. I learned soon after, myself and Martin's conversation that my father probably didn't intend on killing me with the poison, and his intention was to make me sick from it, as he did so he could get a great amount of pleasure from watching me suffer from the sickness of the poison. As well as every day touching the sore bumps on my head from the hits of the poker, the nosebleeds, and generally not feeling well continued as a result of the poisoning. Morning time had come and my brothers were off school for the weekend. I had been lying in bed waiting for everyone to get up. I heard my father getting up. He was always the first to get up. I heard him coming down the hallway and he stopped and pushed in the half-open door in my room. I wondered, what does he want? He never came into me in the mornings, only my mother would come into me in the mornings. He is going to beat me maybe, I thought. He pushed out the door really gently and started to walk towards me with a grin on his face. I started to feel dirty as I then thought he was going to pull the blanket off of me. He leaned in close to my ear and whispered, "Ye are all." Chapter 5, Some Kind of Life. 33. Going to die this evening. You and your mother and the rest of them, I'm going to kill ye all. When I have the jobs I'm going to come in and kill ye all. He was grinning like crazy. He then left quietly. I don't remember the thought I had until everyone had got up. I didn't get up when my mother asked me to. I stayed in my room. My brothers had been up for a while when I got up and got dressed. After I got dressed I started to feel really sad, remembering what my father had said. He was going to kill us all this evening. I sat at the side of the bed for some time feeling very sad, knowing that me and my family were going to die. I never felt sadness like it. I thought of my mother and my brothers not knowing they were going to die, and what they were going to have to go through this evening and what we were all going to go through. I went out of the room. I was overwhelmed with sadness as I walked to the sitting room door. The door was half opened. I looked in and seen Declan there doing something at the window. He had been in the room by himself. He didn't see me and I got very emotional and wanted to tell him that we were going to die this evening. I tried to say it to him, but when I did I started to cry a bit, so I stopped and walked back into the hallway. I really wanted to say it to him, but I didn't want him to see me upset. I waited in the hall for a few more seconds and pushed back the tears and tried not to be emotional and stepped back into the sitting room again. Declan still didn't see me. I tried to say it again and I couldn't once again. I got very emotional and nearly started to cry. I really wanted to say it. I was convinced I wouldn't be able to say it without starting to cry. I took a deep breath and called out for Declan as he was looking out the window. And he turned around. I was choking with tears trying to keep them down. we are all going to die, I said. I was really sad. Declan walked over to me and said, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" He put his hands around me and again saying, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" I replied, "We are all going to die." He was really caring and said, "You'll be all right, you'll be all right." He kept holding me. "He's going to kill us," I said. Declan then said to me, "I won't let him at you, he won't come at you when I'm with you. I'll stay with you for the day and he won't come near you." I was glad I had told Declan. It was nice that he wanted to protect me, but I was still convinced that when the evening came we were all going to die. Declan brought me to the couch and put me lying on it, and said, "I'm going to lie here on the outside and he won't come near you." So Declan lay on the couch and put his arm around me and said, "When he comes in, I won't let him near you." We laid there after that in silence. I felt a bit safe with Declan beside me, but I knew he wouldn't be able to stop my father. As we lay there, I felt so sad. I had accepted that my father was going to kill us all and that this was the last day we were going to be alive. I was overwhelmed with anxiety and sadness. I wasn't able to talk. I was in a state where I didn't want to talk. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, wanting time to go slow. I kept hoping time would go slow, thinking it, and thinking it, and thinking it over and over. As time went on, I was hoping Declan would stick to his word and stay beside me all day like he said. I started to get a small bit of hope, thinking maybe Declan might be able to somehow prevent us all from dying, but the greater thought was when the evening came our father was going to kill us all. Chapter 5, Some Kind of Life. 34. Declan kept his arm around me and I stared at the ceiling, motionless with a huge amount of sadness. Even though brought up in a house of prayer, I never thought of going to heaven. I just kept thinking this is me and my family's last day. I kept thinking about our last day. It made me so sad, but I had in some way accepted that this was the end. I heard the back door open. I got very nervous, but I remembered how my father had said he was going to do this when he came in the evening. To my delight, I heard my mother coming up behind us and saying, "What are you doing there?" in a nice manner. Declan didn't answer her. I was still locked in silence. "Is Maurice asleep?" she said as she looked in at me. She seen that my eyes were open. Declan again didn't answer our mother and I was still unable to talk, staring at the ceiling. She grew suspicious as to why we didn't answer her. We always answered our mother. She kept looking at me. I didn't want her to know what was going on. She then slowly walked off, looking confused, but had a smile on her face as she seen Declan with his hand around me, assuming we were just relaxing on the couch. We stayed on the couch as our mother was preparing dinner. With my mother's presence in the house I felt a bit better, but still very sad and unable to talk. Suddenly my father came in. I wasn't afraid as I still recalled saying that it was the evening that he was going to kill us all. He walked past myself and Declan on the couch. I could see his head turn to the right and quickly look in at me and then look away as he made for the hallway door. On return he had a clear look at me as he walked through the sitting room and into the kitchen. I have no recollection of the rest of the day after that. My father had purposely done this to mess with my mind and drag me down, and he had glanced at me when he passed through the sitting room where myself and Declan lay on the couch, to see had he achieved what he had set out to do since morning, to see me hurt. This pleasured him. The physical and mental torture was occurring so often, I again in some way accepted that I had to go through this. It felt like I was living two lives. Playing during the day like a normal child, and trying to be a man in the evenings, to survive the abuse at the hands of my father. Taking the abuse in my bedroom and just turning over and going to sleep like a normal father reading his son a bedtime story before sleep. But to be picked up out of my bed late one night by my father, he had come in the middle of the night and picked me up and started to carry me out of the room. I wondered, what is he doing? Where is he bringing me? As I nodded off and on, as he carried me into the hallway, I was in his arms like a grown-up would hold a baby. He started to walk fast. I was half asleep. I thought I would bang my head off the wall as he turned the corner at the end of the hall. I thought, what's going on, as I fell asleep. Later on I had woke lying face down on the parlor floor. It was a room that we never used, and had been very cold as there was never a fire lit there. When I woke I got a bit scared and got up as quick as I could and ran back into my bedroom and fell asleep. Chapter 5. Some Kind of Life. 35. This continued very often. What seemed like every night, I would be picked out of my bed late into the night by my father, every time worrying that I was going to bang my head off the corner of the turn in the hallway, and waking later on the floor in the parlor. Later in life I discovered from hospital reports that I had been admitted to hospital at 2.5 years with pneumonia and nearly died while there. And after this my father had been exposing me to the cold by carrying me out of my room late into the night and leaving me in a cold room on a cold floor, and probably had been exposing me to cold conditions like this that caused the hospital stay with pneumonia that nearly ended my life. I also learned that the physical abuse was probably present at that time, before I could even remember. As the year went on, my parents started to socialize a lot more, going to the pub, visiting friends, and attending the holy stations held in neighbors' houses in the surrounding area. They were very happy times for me as I liked all of the people that lived in the area and they treated me very well, but most of all for me it was away from the abuse. What I had learned later in life is that I held on to the good memories and suppressed not all but some of the bad ones. Evening had come. My father had came into my room, punched me repeatedly in the stomach. Again I fought frantically, but he once again won over me and got my pants down, started to punch me between the legs for some time. Then he pulled what I know now to be a vice grips and pliers and left them down on the bed beside him. I didn't know what he was doing. I thought that to myself, are they in his way in his pocket? When he picked up one of them and said to me, "You better not fucking shout or I'll fucking kill ya." He started to pinch me between the legs with the pliers. I felt tremendous pain. I started to hold my breath. I have no memory after that, but this continued as I remember on many other occasions. He would use the pliers and then switch to the vice grips, back and over, while torturing me in my private parts. I have some recollection of some of the pinches from the tools my father used on me. I remember tremendous excruciating pain. I know I didn't shout after he had told me not to, otherwise he would kill me, and I would continue to not shout while in pain with great difficulty. I don't remember him leaving or what way I felt after he left. My father was truly sadistic and had tortured me in this area, as he knew that area would cause me the most pain. In the mornings after a night of beatings and torture by my father, my mother would often come down the hallway right after my father had gone outside. She would say, "Are you okay?" And I always replied, "Yeah," as she then rushed to get things ready to please my father. My mother had grown worried about what my father was doing to me in the room. She had no idea to the extent of what my father was doing to me. She had been manipulated by my father, that I was bold and didn't want to go to bed, and that's why he spent so much time in my room, trying to put me to bed. But she was suspicious and suspected that there might be more to it than she thought. So she told me that she was putting Colin sleeping with me from now on. Chapter 5. Some Kind of Life. 36. Colin hadn't been in my room a night or two when I started to push him out of the bed with my legs. I got very aggressive with him, so much to the point he got afraid of me, and would go back to sleeping in with Declan again. My mother kept asking Colin to go in with me, and I kept pushing him out. This continued for some time, and eventually Colin would not come back even when asked by my mother. My mother's plan to save me had failed. Later in life I found out that I kept kicking Colin out, as I thought he would get the same treatment in the room as I was getting. My mother's brother had started to come to our house and pulled up outside. He didn't come in. My mother would go outside and onto the road. I looked out the window. They were in deep conversation for some time. I knew that my father had stopped my mother from going to see her brothers after the argument my father had with them in their house. I thought that my father didn't want Uncle coming into the house, but I grew suspicious as to the length of the conversation, and they didn't seem to laugh. They were talking about something serious. Uncle had come day after day. Looking out the window, I thought, maybe Uncle is trying to get us out of here, and that's why they won't come into the house, because they don't want my father to hear what they were planning. Some days later my mother disappeared. I don't recall who told me that my mother had gone home with her brothers to the house where she grew up. Me and my brothers didn't get saved, as my father wouldn't let my mother take us away with her, because he knew that she would have no reason to return if she had myself and my brothers with her. That night I lay in bed very sad that my mother had gone away. I felt left behind, but I kept saying to myself, she is saved, and now she can be happy that she is away from it all. I kept thinking of her lying in her old bedroom, wondering, is she happy there? Is she happy where she is? Is she missing me and my brothers? I was hoping she wouldn't be feeling sad. I felt happy for her that she got to get away, and hoped that she would be happy with her new life back home. I felt lonely without her, but I accepted that she had to go. I wouldn't wish her back to the abuse. I was so glad she got away from my father. The following morning my father had brought my brothers to school. I got up to an empty house. My mother was not there for the first time. I felt really lonely, but I knew I had to get on with life now without a mother. My father came back and started to get ready for milking the cows. He did not come into the house. I was without a mother, and I was now without a breakfast, as my father did not prepare anything for me. he came back and went to work outside. After my father finished milking the cows, I had been outside. He seen me and called me, "Come here. I want you," he said. I wondered what he wanted with me and replied, "What?" When he said with anger, "Come here a minute. I want you." I walked towards him wondering what does he want of me. I stopped a bit away from him. He got a bit angry saying, "Come here," I said. I came a bit closer but again stopped away from him. Chapter 5, Some Kind of Life. 37. "Come over here beside the barrel," he said. I walked over to the barrel that was full of water. I didn't know what was going on. When he picked me up and hung me upside down, I knew he was going to put me in the barrel of water. My t-shirt came down over my head and my pants were coming down off my waist. He dangled me over the top of the barrel. I was afraid of him letting me go. I put my hands out to reach the outside of the barrel when I went under the water. I panicked and started breathing and swallowing water. I thought, he's killing me. I'm going to die. I tried frantically to reach the outside of the barrel and push myself up out of the water. I couldn't reach. I was sure I wouldn't be able to get out of the barrel and that I would die there. He then pulled me back up. I tried to breathe and I pushed my body to the side and got one hand on the outside of the barrel. I was afraid of falling. My pants were coming off. My father then hit a belt on my hand and I went under again. I was under for some time swallowing water and thinking I was going to die. He pulled me back up and again trying to catch my breath and get my hands onto the outside of the barrel to stop from going under again. I reached the outside of the barrel and again my father hit my hand very hard and I went under. He done this for some time, putting me under the water and pulling me out, over and over. He then swung me over to the side and started to let me down onto my hands. When I got my hands onto the ground, he let go of my legs. I came down hard on my hip. I started to feel very cold. I got up, pulled my t-shirt down that was up around my shoulders. My hip was very sore. I looked to the side and there was little pebble stones dug into my hip. I rubbed them out of my skin and pulled up my pants that was nearly down at my knees. I couldn't believe I was alive. I could barely breathe from the cold and the shock of what was after happening to me. I felt defeated as I walked away and looked at my father, who stood there grinning with a great sense of pleasure in his face. I walked towards the house. I felt very depressed with what was after happening to me. I again looked back at my father, and he still stood there with a big grin on his face as he watched me walk back towards the house soaking wet in shock. I felt like I had enough. I felt like just giving up. I walked into my room and took off the wet clothes and slowly put on dry ones. I felt so bad. I had given up. I didn't care to be alive anymore. My father had won. He had taken everything from me, my mother, my will to live. He had taken my soul away. That day I walked around the house with no will to live. I was so depressed, it felt like things couldn't get any worse. That night I lay in bed after my father had got his pleasure from beating and torturing me, thinking about my mother, missing her and wondering and hoping was she happy, thinking of her laying in her old room, and hoping she was laying there happy, but I knew that she was probably sad, missing her sons. Chapter 5, Some Kind of Life. 38. The following morning came, and after my father had dropped my brothers to school and finished milking the cows, he started to call my name. When I heard him call, I went out the back door and looked into the yard, where I seen him standing beside the barrel of water. I started to get short of breath. I panicked and started to walk out into the yard. I walked slowly over to him. I knew what he wanted of me, and knew I was going in the barrel of water. My father repeated what he had done to me the previous day. It was a nightmare. I didn't know if I was going to die. Each time my father put me under the water, I didn't know if I was going to come back out. When he finally stopped, he threw me on the ground like an object. He had that pleasured face on him, grinning. He got what he wanted. He done this day after day until eventually my mother had come home, and he had to stop as the barrel of water was within seeing distance of the kitchen window. Chapter 6, School Begins. 39. Chapter 6. School Begin. Age, 5 to 6 years old. Threats, continual verbal and physical abuse, sickness from poisoning, broken arm, lies, intimidations and threats, nightly taken from bed and left on a cold floor, taken at night and abandoned in a mental hospital ward, injected with sedatives, cursing and foul language. My mother had been gone about a week or so. I was delighted to see her come home. She was very quiet for some time when she returned. For some reason I thought that things might be different when my mother had come home, but things didn't change. My father kicked off in the evenings, and kept beating and torturing me in the room. The nosebleeds continued and I started to get violently sick, puking all of the time from the poison. My mother had come to me and said, "You are starting school soon. How do you feel about that?" she said. I replied, "Fine," but I felt the opposite. I didn't want to go to school. On the days leading up to the start of school, my mother would say, "Only 3 days to go." And that made me nervous, knowing any day now I have to go to school. My brothers never complained about school, but I really didn't want to go. I started to tell my mother that I didn't want to go to school, and she would say nicely, "Everyone has to go to school, I'll be fine, your brothers don't mind going to school." The morning of my first day had come. My mother got my school bag ready. My brothers were getting ready and seemed happy, but really felt I didn't want to go. When breakfast was over and everyone was ready, my mother told my brothers, "Go and sit in the car and wait for your father." They then went to the car. My mother asked me was I okay, and I replied, "Mommy, I don't want to go to school." She picked me up and sat on the couch. I was sitting on her knee. She started to move her knee up and down and reached into her pocket and took out a bar of chocolate. "This is for you if you go to school, but don't tell your brothers I gave you this, or they will be giving out that they didn't get any." The chocolate didn't help persuade me, but I knew I had to go. I took the bar from my mother and she said, "That's the good lad. Put it in your pocket and don't lose it, and don't let your brothers see it." Chapter 6, School Begins. 40. She then brought me to the car and put me in the back with my brothers, and she got in the front. My brothers were talking to each other as we waited for our father to drive us there. I wasn't saying anything. I was really nervous, thinking about my first day at school. My father finished what he was doing in the yard and hopped into the car and proceeded to drive up the road towards the school. On the way, I said to myself, maybe it might be okay. My brothers are laughing and joking and don't seem to mind going to school. We reached the gates of the school and my brothers got out and quickly went off to where they had to go. I said to my mother, what do I do? She said, I'll bring you in now. She got out and came round to my door and opened it and walked a few steps to the gate with me when my father shouted, leave him there, when my mother said, I have to bring him in. My father got a bit angry, saying to her, I told you to leave him there to fuck. Let him off, the little cunt. My mother got a bit scared and quickly said, go up there, and go in that door and I'll be fine, and she hurried back to the car and my father drove off. I seen all the other kids with their mother bringing them into the school. I went into the school and didn't know where to go. I said to myself, shouldn't my mother be here showing me where to go like all the other mothers are doing? But my father had made her go home and leave me there by myself. I didn't know what to do or where to go. I slowly walked down the hallway as I watched mothers bringing their kids into their classrooms, when a woman that had left her child at the classroom door spotted me and shouted to the teacher, there's a young boy out here on his own. And then the teacher came out into the hallway and asked me my name. I told her my name and she said, you're in here in my classroom, and brought me in and sat me down. I felt good when I had been settled in the classroom. The teacher then introduced herself and started to tell us about school. I felt bored, but I was happy that my first day wasn't as bad as I thought. At the break, the teacher brought myself and the other kids into the yard. I played with the other kids, and after the break the teacher told us that we would be going home soon. I was delighted to hear I was going home and that we wouldn't have any homework as we had just started school. When school was over, a woman from next door came to me and said who she was and that she was bringing me home. I'm bringing you home for your mother, she said, and told me that her son James was in my class and that we were all going to go home together. I waited at the door with my neighbor when her son came and I recognized him from class. I felt happy with them. The woman was really nice to me and I talked with her son on the way home. They dropped me off at home and the woman said to me, I will be bringing you to school in the morning. I was happy about this. I went in home and my mother asked me how I got on. I said, fine, and she said, did Pauline bring you home? When I said with a smile, yeah, and James as well. Leave your bag in your room and I'll have your dinner ready soon. I ate my dinner and ran around the house until my brothers came home later from school. I was happy when my brothers came home and I didn't have to do homework like them, but couldn't wait for them to be finished so that I would have someone to play with. Chapter 6, School Begins. 41. As the days went on, I got more and more settled in school and I got to know all of the other kids in my class. My mother would bring me to the other kids' houses on the weekends to play and to their birthday parties. My mother was getting me away from the abuse every chance she could get, and I now felt better knowing that there was more to life than the abuse that my father had conditioned me with, and that a part of life was very positive. But my father continued to beat and torture me at night time. I was now living two lives, the one with my friend at school being happy and the other one in the hands of my evil father and his twisted ways that I still thought was part of life and that it was still something that I had to go through. The evenings and weekends were really enjoyable, going to friends' houses and playing with my brothers at home as my father never kept us inside anymore. Myself and my brothers got up to all sorts. Declan would put the ladder up against the shed and we would take turns climbing up the ladder. I would wait for Declan and Philip to go up the ladder first and then I would climb up behind them. We loved to climb the ladder any chance we got. Declan would set up the ladder after school and on the weekends. The weekend had come and myself and my brothers had been outside climbing up the side of the shed. My father had seen us as he was working around the yard, but never said anything as he didn't mind us climbing the shed. My mother had asked our father to call us in for our dinner. He came around to the side of the shed and told us to go in for the dinner. My brothers straight away obeyed our father and went for their dinner. I stayed there. I didn't want to go inside yet. I started to climb the ladder. I went up a few steps and came back down. I started to pick things up and put them back on the ground when my father came around the corner. He was a bit away from me. I thought I was going to have to go in for my dinner, but to my delight my father didn't ask me to come inside. He stood there for a few seconds saying nothing and then he went back around the corner. I started to climb the ladder again and came back down and started picking small stones from the ground when I saw out of the corner of my eye my father peeking his head around the corner of the shed. I said to myself, "What is he doing?" I looked at him and he was smiling. He then pulled his head back. As I continued to pick up stones from the ground I again seen my father peek his head around the corner, and again he was smiling. I knew he was up to something. Again his head disappeared around the corner and I continued doing what I was doing. A few moments later I turned around to see my father standing at the corner of the shed. He was staring at me with a grin on his face. He made me very nervous as he stood there for some time not moving, staring me down with that pleasured look on his face. I didn't move. I was looking at him wondering what he was doing. Did he want me for something? He started to walk quickly to his right. He kept looking at me. I knew something wasn't right. I was suspicious of what he was doing. When he bent down and picked up a thick plank of timber about 5 foot in length, I still had no idea what he was doing. Chapter 6: School Begins. 42. While still looking me in the eyes, he quickly came towards me. I thought, "What's happening?" When he lifted the plank of wood that he was holding down by his side quickly around to the back and swung the plank with speed and force and hit me on the arm just below my shoulder. I felt tremendous pain. I knew with the pain and the violent nature that my father had hit me, that my arm was badly damaged. I was shocked at what just happened. I was in such shock I didn't let a roar when my father, standing there for a few seconds with a big grin on his face getting pleasure seeing me in tremendous pain, leaned into my face and said in a bit of a panic, "I'll fucking tell your mother that you fell off the ladder." I couldn't believe what he was doing. I thought to myself, he is never going to stop. He ran around the side of the shed and started to call my mother, "Mary. Mary. Mary." When my mother heard him, she must have come outside. When he said, "Bring around the car," Maurice fell off the ladder. "We have to bring him to the hospital. His arm might be broke," acting to be in a panic. I stood there still in shock, and in shock as to how far my father was willing to take things by shouting out. Maurice fell off the ladder, manipulating the situation and my mother. I started to hold my arm. The pain was getting worse. My father quickly came back saying, "I'll fucking tell your mother you fell off the ladder, and if you go to hospital I'll fucking tell the doctors that you fell off the ladder, and that's that," he said. He then went over and stood at the corner of the shed in sight of my mother, who was driving in the yard. He was acting to be in a panic, calling her by waving his hand as to hurry her on. When my mother came around the corner, my father went straight towards the car as my mother was stopping. He opened the back door of the car while saying to my mother, "He fell off the ladder climbing the shed. We'll have to bring him to the hospital." "Come on, Maurice," my father said. "We'll bring you to the hospital." I went over, and when I was getting in with my father pretending to be gently helping me in, my mother, looking worried, asked me was I all right. I said, "Yeah, I am." "Is your arm very sore?" she said, and I replied, "Yeah. It's very sore." "You'll be fine," she said. "We're going to bring you to the hospital now and you'll be fine. Don't worry." She turned to my father and said, "Get the rest of them out to the car and hurry on." My father went into the house to get my brothers, who were eating their dinner. My mother comforted me, telling me I was going to be fine, saying, "The minute your father gets your brothers out to the car, we will be on the way into the hospital." My brothers came out of the house and made their way to the car. My mother got out of the driver's seat and went around the other side to make way for our father, who was going to do the driving. When my brothers got to the door of the car, my mother, who was standing at the passenger door, said, "Lads, get in easy, 'cause Maurice's hand is broken, and put him sitting on your lap." She got in and Declan opened the back door and said, "Push into the middle and you can sit on my lap." My father got in the driver's seat. I moved in, and then Declan came in and carefully lifted me onto his lap. Colin, Kieran and Dean then got in. "Are ye all in?" my mother said, and when we replied, "Yeah," my father proceeded to drive in the direction of Galway City to the hospital. Chapter 6, School Begins. 43. My father started to talk to my mother about jobs that had to be done on the farm, keeping her from quizzing me about the fall, but any chance she got she would turn to me and ask was I okay. I was still shocked at what my father had done to me at the shed, and now is pretending to care, bringing me to the hospital. I wasn't able to talk. I didn't want to. As the journey continued, my brothers were talking and laughing. They were in great form, but I didn't feel like joining in. I was in tremendous pain, and I was gazing out the front window as I sat between the front seats on Declan's lap, thinking my father done this to me, and he's pretending that I fell off the ladder and everyone believes him. Throughout the journey, I was shocked at the way my father was acting. He didn't look guilty, pretending as if he had done nothing, talking to my mother as if nothing happened. I really couldn't believe what he was doing. When we got to the hospital, my father said to my brothers, "You wait here in the car, and myself and your mother will bring him in." When we got in and the doctor came over, my father said, I didn't see what happened, but when I found him, he was on the ground beneath the ladder. Himself and his brothers had been climbing the ladder earlier. He's too small to be going up ladders, but sure, what can you do with him? He's a rouge. Straight away my father had manipulated the doctor. The doctor believed my father, saying ladders are very dangerous for little boys, they are only for grown-ups to be climbing. I didn't reply, I just nodded my head, feeling ashamed as if I had done something wrong. The doctors brought me into a room and x-rayed me and brought me back out and said, "We'll have to wait a while to get the results of the x-ray." I sat on my mother's knee while we waited for the doctor to come back with the results. My father sat there staying very quiet. The doctor came with the results, telling my parents that I fractured my arm and that they were going to put my arm in a sling until it gets better. The doctors then put the sling on my arm and told us we could go home, and to